Dr. Richard Schwartz, a renowned expert in the field of psychology, was recently interviewed by Andrew Huberman on the topic of achieving inner peace and healing.
Schwartz began by explaining that the mind is not a single, unitary entity, but rather a collection of multiple parts, each with its own unique qualities and resources. He referred to these parts as subpersonalities or ego states, and noted that they are a natural part of the human mind. Schwartz went on to explain that trauma and attachment injuries can cause these parts to become frozen in time, leading to destructive patterns of behavior. He shared that he stumbled upon this phenomenon 41 years ago, while working with a group of bulimic children and their families. Through his work, he developed the internal family systems, IFS, model, which is a form of psychotherapy that aims to help individuals understand and work with their internal parts.
Andrew Huberman asked Schwartz to elaborate on the different components of the IFS model.
Schwartz explained that the model is based on the idea that the mind is composed of multiple parts, each with its own unique role and function. He noted that some parts are aware and conscious, while others are not. He also explained that the model is not just a therapeutic approach, but also a way of understanding the human mind and a paradigm for personal growth. Schwartz discussed the concept of trauma and how it can affect individuals. He defined trauma as an event that is perceived as life-threatening or overwhelming, and noted that it can cause individuals to lock away their most sensitive parts in order to avoid feeling pain or distress. He explained that this can lead to the development of protective roles, such as the critic or the manager, which can be destructive and interfere with an individual's life.
Andrew Huberman asked Schwartz to elaborate on the different types of protective roles, including the manager and the firefighter.
Schwartz explained that the manager is a part that tries to control and manage an individual's life in order to avoid triggering traumatic memories or emotion. He noted that the firefighter is a part that is reactive and impulsive and is triggered by intense emotions. He explained that these parts are not the essence of an individual, but rather roles that they have been forced into due to trauma or other experiences. Schwartz also discussed the concept of exiles, which are parts that have been locked away due to trauma or other experiences. He explained that exiles are often the most sensitive and vulnerable parts of an individual, and that they can be triggered by certain events or emotions. He noted that the goal of IFS therapy is to help individuals access and heal their exiles, rather than trying to suppress or avoid them.
Andrew Huberman shared a personal anecdote about a recent conversation with a family member that became heated and overwhelming.
Schwartz explained that in such situations, the manager and firefighter parts may be triggered, leading to feelings of anger and overwhelm. He noted that the goal of IFS therapy is to help individuals develop a greater awareness of their internal parts and to learn how to work with them in a more effective way. The discussion highlighted the importance of understanding and working with one's internal parts, and provided practical insights and strategies for managing trauma and promoting personal growth. Schwartz realized that the conversation was not going anywhere due to underlying tension and poor communication. He shared a similar experience with his wife, where he had to let go of the conversation and revisit it later.
Andrew and Schwartz decided to explore the emotions that arose during the conversation. Andrew focused on the feeling of frustration and located it in his body, describing it as a pressure between his midsection and forehead. Schwartz asked Andrew to get curious about this feeling and ask it what it wanted him to know. Andrew's response was that the feeling was afraid of not being able to discern the truth. He realized that this part of him was trying to protect his sense of truth and was triggered when someone misinterpreted his motives or feelings. Andrew understood that this part of him was important, but also acknowledged that it could escalate situations. Schwartz asked Andrew to explore this part further, asking it why it was so hard for it to let go of the need to protect his truth. Andrew's response was that if he couldn't hold on to his truth, nothing would make sense. He realized that this part of him was afraid of chaos and disorder. As they continued to explore, Andrew discovered that this part of him was also protecting a more vulnerable part of himself that felt injured when someone misattuned to his motives. He realized that if he let go of this response, he might move into a mode of judgment towards the other person. Schwartz pointed out that Andrew had been able to exile this judgmental part of himself, but it was still present. Andrew acknowledged that he was comfortable with the idea of taking distance from people or situations to maintain a loving stance, but this part of him was trying to protect him from being hurt. In summary, Andrew and Schwartz explored the emotions that arose during an intense conversation and discovered that Andrew's need to protect his truth was rooted in a fear of chaos and disorder. They also found that this part of Andrew was protecting a more vulnerable part of himself that felt injured when someone misattuned to his motives. By acknowledging and understanding these parts, Andrew was able to gain a new perspective and develop a greater sense of self-awareness.
Schwartz also discussed the concept of the self with a capital S.
He explained that it's not about him becoming the good attachment figure, but rather Andrew becoming that for his inner parts. By accessing this self, Andrew can trust himself to handle challenging situations and have more constructive conversations.
Schwartz shared an example from his own life, where he was able to stay in a calm and compassionate state during a conversation with his wife, thanks to his inner self. He's developed a method called internal family systems, or IFS, which flips the traditional therapist-client dynamic on its head. Instead of relying on a therapist to guide the healing process, IFS empowers individuals to become their own therapists, working with their internal parts to achieve inner peace and healing.
Andrew Huberman, the host, resonates with this approach, having learned to parent himself through experiences like living alone and running a laboratory. He appreciates the value in learning to mother and father oneself and sees IFS as a powerful tool for doing so.
But how does one access IFS without a trained therapist? Schwartz explains that he initially resisted sharing IFS with the public due to concerns about its potential impact on individuals with trauma. However, he's since developed a workbook that allows people to work with their protectors and get to know them in a safer way. By doing so, individuals can begin to understand that their judgmental or fearful parts are not inherently negative, but rather valuable components of their internal system.
Andrew Huberman shares a personal example of how he struggles with role confusion and identity, particularly when it comes to politics. He feels like he's caught between two extremes, with no clear affiliation or sense of belonging.
Schwartz acknowledges that this is a common experience, and that IFS can help individuals navigate such conflicts by accessing their self a state of clarity, courage, and confidence that can guide decision-making. Schwartz explains that IFS is not just about releasing negative emotions, but also about unburdening individuals from the legacy of past trauma. He shares his vision of large-scale legacy unburdenings, where groups of people come together to release their collective burdens and access more self-leadership. The conversation turns to the role of somatic experience in IFS.
Andrew Huberman wonders if the approach is more suited to individuals who are naturally more somatic, but Schwartz assures him that anyone can benefit from IFS, even those who are more cognitive. The key is to get the thinking part to trust the process and allow the individual to access their bodily sensations. The two discuss the process of IFS in more detail, including how to localize sensations in the body and ask questions from a place of curiosity.
Schwartz emphasizes that the goal is not to reveal underlying layers, but rather to allow the answers to emerge naturally. The conversation touches on the potential combination of IFS with psychedelic therapies. Schwartz shares that he's been working with ketamine and IFS and has seen promising results.
Andrew Huberman is open about his own experiences with psychedelics, but cautions that they may not be suitable for young people due to the brain's natural plasticity during that stage of development. While clinical trials have shown promising results, especially for MDMA in treating PTSD, the FDA has not yet approved it as a treatment. However, with the right guidance and approach, psychedelics can be a powerful tool for healing and growth.
Dr. Richard Schwartz shared his concerns about ketamine clinics that hand out the drug without proper guidance, leaving individuals to navigate the experience on their own. In contrast, he's proud to say that his model, IFS, has been adopted as a primary approach for psychedelics. IFS recognizes that our minds are composed of different parts, including managers, exiles, and protectors. When we're in a state of inner peace, our managers go offline, allowing our exiles to emerge and receive attention.
Andrew Huberman noted that ketamine works differently than MDMA, as a dissociative anesthetic that can induce a sense of non-dual awareness. This can be a powerful experience, but it's crucial to approach it with caution and guidance. He also shared his personal experience with developing a deeper relationship with spirituality and God through the practice of giving up control. The conversation turned to the topic of calming down the forebrain, which can be achieved through various means, including psychedelics, breathwork, and meditation.
Schwartz emphasized that these practices can help put our managers to sleep, allowing our exiles to emerge and receive attention. However, this can also be a terrifying experience, as our exiles may be stuck in traumatic memories. By welcoming these parts and working with them, we can access calm and promote healing.
Andrew Huberman shared a personal anecdote about using Function, a comprehensive lab testing service, to detect elevated levels of mercury in his blood. He credited Function with providing valuable insights and guidance on how to reduce his mercury levels. The conversation then turned to the topic of shame and how it can be incredibly freeing to own and acknowledge our shameful parts. However, by acknowledging and working with these parts, we can release the burdens they carry and transform them into positive forces. Andrew Huberman noted that this approach can be applied to other areas of our lives, such as intolerance and judgmental behavior. By recognizing and working with our own judgmental parts, we can develop compassion for others and see past their protective behaviors. This doesn't mean we become vulnerable to harm, but rather that we become more resilient and better equipped to navigate challenging situations. By staying in a state of self and compassion, we can avoid engaging in unhealthy dynamics and promote greater understanding and empathy. When we're hurt by our parents, parts of us want to protect us from further harm, while others are desperate for redemption and seek it in partners who resemble those parents. This repetition compulsion, as Andrew Huberman calls it, is an attempt to resolve unresolved issues from the past. However, it often leads to more harm and a sense of burden in the relationship. The good news is that by doing internal work on oneself, one can break free from these patterns and develop a healthier attachment style.
Schwartz's approach, known as internal family systems, IFS, involves working with the different parts of our psyche, including protectors and exile. By getting to know these parts and helping them connect with our inner self, we can unburden them and break free from the repetition compulsion.
Andrew Huberman notes that this process is experiential, not just conceptual. It requires feeling the sensations in the body associated with these parts, rather than just intellectually understanding them.
Schwartz agrees, saying that people often don't truly get it until they experience it for themselves. The value of doing this internal work lies in its ability to help us develop a sense of self and become our own good attachment figure. This in turn can free up our partners and lead to healthier relationships. While some people may be naturally more resilient and less prone to trauma, Schwartz estimates that only a small percentage of people have had a minimum of trauma in their upbringing. As for the resurgence of organized religion, Schwartz believes that it may be a response to our drifting away from core structures and a desire for meaning and connection. However, he also emphasizes the importance of doing internal work on oneself without requiring input or participation from others.
Andrew Huberman suggests that posing questions to listeners as an exercise could be a valuable way to help them tap into their own inner wisdom.
Schwartz agrees and leads listeners through a series of questions, encouraging them to get to know their protective parts and explore their relationships with them. The exercise involves noticing the location of the protective part in the body, how it feels towards it, and what it wants to know about itself. Listeners are also encouraged to appreciate the part's efforts to protect them, even if it's misguided, and to explore what it might like to do instead if it were released from its protective role. Schwartz emphasizes the importance of writing down key takeaways from this exercise, as it can help solidify new relationships with our parts and prevent them from reversing. He advises people to check in with their parts daily asking what they need and how they're doing, and to cultivate compassion and appreciation for them. By doing this internal work, we can develop a greater sense of self and become more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It's a life practice that can lead to greater inner peace, healing, and healthier relationships. However, Schwartz worked through these feelings by acknowledging and understanding his nervous parts. This approach allowed him to shift his perspective and have a more constructive conversation with his inner self. Schwartz explains that people often have multiple inner parts, including protectors, managers, and exile. Exiles are parts of us that have been hurt or traumatized, and we often lock them away to avoid feeling overwhelmed. However, this can lead to the development of protective parts, such as managers and firefighters, which try to control or distract us from our painful emotions. Managers are concerned with pleasing others and avoiding rejection, while firefighters are more impulsive and reactive, often using substances or addictive behaviors to cope. Schwartz notes that suicidal parts are often motivated by a desire to escape overwhelming emotions, rather than a genuine desire to die. By working with these parts and understanding their underlying fears, it's possible to transform them into parts that want to help us live. This approach is different from traditional therapy, which often focuses on suppressing or avoiding painful emotions.
Andrew Huberman shares his own experience with workaholism, which he realized was a form of dissociation. He was afraid of disappearing or losing his sense of self if he didn't work constantly. However, by exploring the underlying fears and emotions, he was able to adjust his work habits and find more balance in his life.
Schwartz notes that this is an example of the IFS approach, where we work with our inner to access the complete 29-minute summary and unlock detailed insights for each topic discussed in the video. Please subscribe to quick podcast summaries on Spotify and Apple Podcasts with free trial and later, just for the price of candy in most places. Happy listening.